An 8-year-old girl was sitting on the sidewalk with 2 babies in her lap when she asked a question that changed a millionaire's life forever. Daniel Carter was running late for yet another meeting when he saw a scene that made his world stop. A little girl, who couldn't have been more than 8, was sitting on the sidewalk of Maple Avenue with 2 babies in her lap. It wasn't just the fact of seeing children on the street that struck him. It was the way she was holding the 2 babies, with a care that seemed too heavy for someone so small. The traffic light turned red right in front of the scene, and Daniel sat there, watching through the window of his sleek black Tesla. The girl had messy brown hair and clothes that had once been bright, but now held the undefined color of dust and time. She was rocking the babies with a gentleness that clashed with the harshness of the situation, whispering something he couldn't hear. One of the babies started crying, and Daniel saw her panic for a few seconds. Before she could calm him down, she looked around as if searching for help, but people hurried past, avoiding looking directly at the situation. It was Thursday, mid-afternoon, and everyone was in a rush to get somewhere. Work, school pickups, or happy hours. The light turned green, but Daniel couldn't hit the gas. There was something about that scene that moved him in a way he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the forced maturity in the girl's gestures. Maybe it was the way she protected the babies like an experienced mother, even though she was just a kid herself. Or maybe it was the fact that, at 35, he himself had never held a baby in his life. Behind him, a car honked impatiently. Daniel blinked, snapping back to reality, and glanced at the dashboard clock. 4:15 in the afternoon. The meeting was at 4:30, and he was still 15 minutes away from the office in downtown Seattle. But when he looked back at the sidewalk, he saw the girl was trying to stand up, holding both babies at once and nearly losing her balance. Without a second thought, Daniel pulled the car into a no-parking zone right in front of the scene, stepped out quickly, his gray Armani suit contrasting sharply with the surroundings. His polished leather shoes clicked against the asphalt as he approached, and the girl looked up, startled. "Hi," Daniel said softly, crouching down to her level. "Are you okay?" The girl studied him for a few seconds, her brown eyes looking way too big for her thin face. She clutched the babies against her chest, as if bracing herself to protect them from danger. "I'm fine," she answered, her voice hoarse, like she hadn't spoken in hours. Daniel noticed one of the babies was crying softly, a weak cry that sounded more like exhaustion than hunger. The other was sleeping soundly, but Daniel could see they were both very small, probably just a few months old. "Are they your brothers?" Daniel asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Yes." The answer came fast, defensive. "And your parents?" The girl looked down. "I don't have parents anymore." Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. He had grown up in a stable family in the suburbs. He had never gone without, never known hunger or abandonment. Seeing such a small child carrying such a heavy burden stirred something deep inside him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Isabella." She hesitated before continuing. "And they're Michael and Peter." "Michael and Peter," Daniel repeated, looking at the babies. "Twins by the looks of it." "Such beautiful names." Isabella watched him suspiciously, but Daniel could see she was too tired to keep her guard all the way up. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her small hands were shaking just a little from exhaustion. "Have you guys eaten anything today?" Daniel asked. Isabella didn't answer right away. She looked at the babies, then back at Daniel, as if she was calculating whether or not she could trust him. "This morning," she said finally, "I managed to get some powdered milk at the corner convenience store." Daniel felt his stomach turn. It was 4:30 in the afternoon, and she hadn't eaten since morning, and neither had the babies. "Isabella," Daniel said, choosing his words carefully, "would you like to go get something to eat? There's a diner right nearby. Can I take you there?" "Why?" The question came out thick with suspicion. "What do you want?" The bluntness of the question took Daniel by surprise. Isabella was only 8 years old, but life had already taught her to be wary of strangers offering help, and Daniel realized she was right to be suspicious. "I don't want anything," he said honestly. "I just want to help." "Everyone wants something," Isabella replied, holding the babies tighter. "They always do." Daniel fell silent for a moment, trying to grasp what an 8-year-old child could have gone through to speak like that, and then replace it professionally, and left what kind of people had taken advantage of her, and what kind of situations she had faced. "You're right to be careful," Daniel said finally, "but I promise, I just want to help. You all look tired and hungry." One of the babies started crying louder, and Isabella began rocking him automatically, humming softly. Daniel realized she knew exactly how to calm her brothers, as if she'd been doing it for a long time. "How long have you guys been on your own?" Daniel asked softly. 3 months, Isabella said without looking at him. "Our parents died in the car crash 3 months ago." Daniel tried to imagine what those 3 months had been like for Isabella. An 8-year-old child taking care of 2 babies all by herself. How did she manage? Where did they sleep? How did she get food? "Don't you have any relatives? Grandparents, aunts or uncles?" Isabella shook her head. "We only had our parents." Daniel looked around the busy street. People kept passing by, absorbed in their own lives, not even noticing them. Conversation happening right there on the sidewalk. He thought about the meeting he was missing, the contracts he needed to sign, and the business decisions waiting for him. But he realized none of that mattered right now. "Isabella," Daniel said, making a decision that would change his life forever. "How about I take you all to my house? You can take a bath, have a proper meal, and get some rest." The girl stared at him with an expression that was a mix of hope and terror. "And afterwards, we'll figure out what to do. But first, you guys need some care." Isabella stood in silence for a long moment, looking at Daniel as if she was trying to read his soul. Michael had stopped crying and was now looking at Daniel with curious eyes. Peter kept sleeping, but Daniel could see the baby was way too thin. "Do you have kids?" Isabella asked. "No," Daniel answered honestly. "No wife. Why do you want to help?" It was a simple question, but Daniel realized he didn't have a simple answer. Because he wanted to help? Because he had stopped the car? Because he was there missing an important meeting, talking to a kid he didn't even know? Because you guys need it, he said finally. And because it's the right thing to do. Isabella studied his face for a few more seconds. Then she looked at Michael and Peter, like she was consulting the babies on the decision. "If I go with you," she said, slowly, "do you promise you won't separate us?" The question hit Daniel like a punch. Isabella was only 8 years old, but she already knew the world could take away the people she loved. She'd already lost her parents, and now she lived in fear of losing her brothers too. "I promise," Daniel said, and he realized that he was making the most important promise of his life. Isabella nodded slowly. "Okay." Daniel stood up and reached out a hand to help her. Isabella hesitated for a second before accepting his help, standing up carefully so she wouldn't wake Peter. Michael kept looking at Daniel with curiosity, like he was trying to decide if he liked him or not. "My car's over there," Daniel said, pointing to the Tesla. "It's safe. It has seatbelts for you guys." Isabella followed Daniel to the car, walking slowly because of the weight of the 2 babies. Daniel opened the back door and helped her get settled, holding Michael while she put on her seatbelt. "Will they be safe like that?" Daniel asked, worried about the fact that he didn't have car seats for the babies. "They will," Isabella said, holding her 2 brothers firmly. "I'll hold them." Daniel walked around the car and got into the driver's seat. When he looked in the rearview mirror, he saw Isabella holding the babies with fierce protection, her eyes alert for any danger. She didn't completely trust him yet, and Daniel understood he'd have to earn that trust slowly. As he drove through the city, Daniel asked himself what exactly he was doing. He had an organized, predictable life, centered on work and business. He didn't know anything about taking care of kids, much less babies. He didn't have the setup for it. He didn't have the experience. But when he looked in the rearview mirror again and saw Isabella humming softly to calm Michael, who had started to cry, Daniel knew he had made the right choice. Maybe he didn't know how to take care of kids, but he could learn. And maybe, just maybe, Isabella and the babies needed him just as much as he was starting to realize he needed them. "Isabella," Daniel said, stopping at a traffic light, "is there anything you want to go get? Clothes, toys?" "We don't have anything else," she answered simply. "We lost everything when we couldn't pay the rent." Daniel nodded, his heart tightening at the tragic simplicity of her answer. Isabella had nothing left, except the 2 brothers she carried in her arms. And now, by some miracle or fate, she had him too. It remained to be seen if he'd be strong enough to handle the responsibility he had just taken on. It remained to be seen if he could give Isabella, Michael, and Peter the family they had lost. And most importantly, the question remained whether he could manage to become the father he had never planned to be, but was perhaps always destined to be. Daniel's house was located in a gated community in the upscale suburbs of Seattle, one of the most exclusive areas in the city. When the security guard saw the Tesla approaching, he waved casually, but his expression changed when he noticed the children in the back seat. Daniel noticed the look of surprise, but didn't stop to explain. "Is this where you live?" Isabella asked as they passed through the main gate. Her voice carried a mix of awe and discomfort. Yeah, Daniel replied, driving slowly through the tree-lined streets of the complex. It's pretty different from where you guys used to live. Isabella nodded, her big eyes absorbing the huge houses, the well-kept gardens, the luxury cars parked in the driveways. We used to live in a small apartment in the city. It was tiny, but it was ours. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. Isabella spoke of their old home with a longing that seemed too heavy for a child to carry. When he pulled up in front of his house, a modern 2-story building with large glass, windows, and a view of the Puget Sound, he realized how intimidating it all must seem to her. Shall we go in? Asked Daniel, turning off the engine. Isabella hesitated. Michael had woken up during the ride and was now looking around with curiosity, while Peter continued to sleep soundly. It's really big, she whispered. It is too big for just one person, Daniel admitted. Maybe it's the right size for 4 people. Inside, Daniel felt like he was seeing his own home through Isabella's eyes. The entrance hall with high ceilings, the spacious living room with designer furniture, the open concept kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances. Everything was very beautiful, very organized, very cold. It wasn't the house made for children. You guys can sit on the sofa, Daniel said, but Isabella remained standing, holding the babies. I'll get it dirty, she said, looking at her own clothes. Isabella, the house is meant to be used. Sit down, please. She sat on the very edge of the white leather sofa, as if she were ready to run away at any moment. Michael started to cry, and Daniel realized the cry was different from what he had heard on the street, more urgent, more desperate. He's hungry, Isabella said, the worry evident in her voice. They need to eat. I'm a little hungry too. Daniel realized he had absolutely nothing in the house suitable for babies. No formula, no bottles, no diapers. His fridge was practically empty, with just a few energy drinks and some leftover takeout pizza. What do they usually eat? Daniel asked, feeling completely lost. Milk, Isabella answered as if it were obvious. And sometimes I'd make oatmeal when we had it. Okay, I'm going to run out quickly to buy a few things. You guys can stay here and take a shower if you want. No. Isabella stood up quickly. We're going with you. Isabella, you're safe here. I'll be back in half an hour. No. Her voice became firm, almost desperate. We don't stay alone in strange places. We go together, or we leave. Daniel realized that Isabella had lived through situations that taught her never to lower her guard completely. Even there in safety, she couldn't relax. All right, Daniel said. The trip to the supermarket was an eye-opening experience for Daniel. He had never bought baby products in his life, and Isabella had to guide him through almost everything. Formula, bottles, diapers, baby food, wet wipes. The list seemed endless. Michael likes the blue brand better, Isabella explained, pointing at the cans of formula. And Peter prefers the bottle with the small nipple. Daniel watched her choosing products with the knowledge of an experienced mother. At 8 years old, Isabella knew more about caring for babies than he ever would. The responsibility she carried on her small shoulders was impressive and heartbreaking at the same time. How did you learn to take care of them? Daniel asked as they pushed the cart through the aisles. My mom taught me when they were born, Isabella answered. She said I was the big sister and I had to help protect them. And you've been doing that very well. Isabella smiled for the first time since they met. It was a small, shy smile, but it lit up her tired face. Back at the house, Daniel felt more useful helping Isabella prepare the bottles. She taught him how to measure the right amount of formula, the ideal water temperature, and how to test if it wasn't too hot. Like this, she said, showing him how to hold Michael so he could feed. You have to support the head, otherwise he'll choke. Daniel watched Isabella feed Peter with infinite patience, talking to the baby, making funny faces that made him smile. It was hard to believe that such a small child could be so careful and responsible. Isabella, Daniel said after the babies finished their milk. Can I ask you a personal question? She nodded, adjusting Peter in her lap. How did you guys survive these past 3 months? Isabella stayed silent for a moment, as if deciding how much she could share. In the beginning, it was easier, she said. Thankfully, I still had a little money left over from the funeral. I managed to stay in our apartment for another month, and then the landlord wanted the apartment back. He said I was too young to sign a lease. Isabella's voice got quieter. We went to a neighbor's house who said she'd help. Daniel realized by the way Isabella spoke that the experience hadn't been good. Did she help? He asked gently. For a week. Then she said it was too much responsibility, that I had to look for relatives or give the babies up for adoption. And you didn't want to? Ever? The answer came firm, without hesitation. They're my brothers. We stick together. Daniel felt a deep admiration for Isabella. At 8 years old, she had made the decision to keep the family together, no matter the cost. And after the neighbor's house, we just stayed on the street. I sold candy at the school gate, begged for help to buy milk. At night, we slept in places that seemed safe. The simplicity with which Isabella told the story made Daniel realize how much she had normalized a situation that was completely abnormal. An 8-year-old child shouldn't know the word survival, much less have to live. What kind of places? Daniel asked, although he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. In the doorways of some stores that closed early, under the church awning. Once we slept in the hospital waiting room because it was raining really hard. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, trying to imagine Isabella out on the streets alone with 2 babies, searching for a safe place to spend the night. The image was almost unbearable. No one ever tried to help? Some people gave us food or money, Isabella said, but some folks tried to split us up. They said I was too little to look after babies. And yet, you managed to keep everyone together, always. Isabella looked down at Michael and Peter, who had fallen asleep after their milk. I promised my mom I'd take care of them. And I'm going to. Daniel watched Isabella settling the babies on the sofa, tucking pillows around them so they wouldn't fall, and checking to make sure they were breathing okay. Every move she made was careful, protective, full of love. Isabella, Daniel said, would you like to take a shower? I can watch Michael and Peter. She hesitated. Do you know how to take care of them? Can you teach me? Isabella spent the next 15 minutes explaining to Daniel how to change diapers, how to hold them, and what to do if they cried. It felt strange being taught by a child, but Daniel realized Isabella was way more experienced than him in basically everything about taking care of kids. If Michael cries a lot, you can sing to him, Isabella said before heading up to the bathroom. He likes music. What kind of music? Anything. He's not picky. When Isabella left to shower, Daniel was alone with the babies for the first time. They kept sleeping, but he felt nervous, like he was responsible for something incredibly fragile and precious. He looked around the quiet room and realized just how much his life had changed in a few hours. Just this morning, he was a single businessman, only worried about meetings and contracts. Now here he was, watching 2 babies while an 8-year-old kid took a shower in his bathroom. Peter stirred in his sleep, and Daniel held his breath. But the baby stayed asleep. Michael opened his eyes and just stared at Daniel curiously, not crying. Hi, Michael, Daniel whispered. I'm Daniel. I'm going to take care of you guys now. Michael smiled, a gummy, toothless grin that made Daniel's heart squeeze with emotion. It was the first time a baby had ever smiled at him, and Daniel realized he'd never felt a responsibility this huge and this terrifying in his entire life. When Isabella came down, clean and wearing clothes borrowed from Daniel that were huge on her, she looked like a different child. Her scrubbed face revealed freckles that the dirt had been hiding, and her wet hair was lighter than Daniel had imagined. Did they behave? She asked, immediately checking if the babies were okay. Perfectly. Michael even smiled at me. Isabella smiled too, looking more relaxed for the first time. He likes you. That night, Daniel improvised a room for them downstairs, using pillows and blankets to create a safe space for the babies to sleep. Isabella insisted on staying on the floor next to her brothers. I have plenty of beds, Daniel said. Why don't you sleep in a real bed? No, Isabella replied, cuddling up on the floor. We always sleep together. It's safer. Daniel didn't insist. He realized Isabella needed to keep some routines, some rituals that made her feel in control of the situation. Before going to his own room, Daniel paused at the doorway, watching Isabella sing softly to the baby. It was a simple lullaby, but sung with so much love that it made Daniel's eyes fill with tears. For the first time in many years, Daniel fell asleep thinking about people other than himself, thinking about how he could make Isabella, Michael, and Peter's lives better, thinking about how he could give them the safety and love they deserved. And for the first time in many years, his big, quiet house didn't seem empty anymore. Daniel woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of crying coming from downstairs. For a few seconds, he was confused, trying to understand where that noise was coming from. Then he remembered. Isabella, Michael, and Peter were sleeping in the living room, and one of the babies was crying. He ran downstairs, still in his pajamas, and found Isabella already awake, trying to calm Michael while Peter slept soundly. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept well all night. Is everything okay? Daniel asked as he approached. He has a fever, Isabella said, her voice heavy with worry. It's not normal, Michael never gets sick. Daniel touched the baby's forehead and felt that it was really hot. His heart raced. He had no idea what to do when a baby got sick. "We need to take him to the doctor," Daniel said, already heading for the phone. "Doctors are expensive," Isabella replied automatically. "I always took care of him at home when he got a cold." Daniel stopped and looked at her. Isabella was only 8 years old, but she already knew that doctors cost money she didn't have. She had already learned to solve everything by herself because there was no other option. "Isabella, we have money for a doctor now. I'm going to call a private pediatrician. Dr. Roberts is very good." While Daniel made the call, Isabella kept holding Michael, humming softly to calm him down. The baby was crying, but it was a different cry from the day before, weaker, more tired. "Dr. Roberts can see us in an hour," Daniel said after hanging up. "Let's get ready." In the car, on the way to the office, Daniel realized how tense Isabella was. She was holding Michael tightly, whispering words of comfort that seemed to be as much for the baby as for herself. "Michael is going to be okay," Daniel said, trying to reassure her. "And what if he isn't?" The question came out in a desperate whisper. "What if I lose him too?" Daniel felt his heart tighten. Isabella had already lost her parents. The idea of losing one of her brothers terrified her. "You won't lose him," Daniel said firmly. "Dr. Roberts is the best pediatrician in the city. Michael will be fine." At the office, Dr. Roberts examined Michael carefully. He was a 50-year-old man with gray hair and infinite patience with children. Daniel had known him for years, but had never seen the doctor at work. "It's just a cold, doctor," Roberts said after the exam. "Nothing serious. With the right medication, he'll get better in a few days." Isabella sighed with relief, but Dr. Roberts wasn't finished. "But I need to talk to you about the children's general condition," he said, his tone becoming more serious. "Michael and Peter are malnourished. Not severely, but it's clear they've faced hardships recently." Daniel looked at Isabella, who lowered her eyes in shame. "It's not Isabella's fault," Daniel said quickly. "She did the best she could." "I'm sure of that," Dr. Roberts replied. "But right now, we need to focus on getting their weight back up. I'm prescribing vitamins and a special diet." After the appointment, while they were waiting at the pharmacy, Isabella asked, "How much was it?" "It doesn't matter," Daniel replied. "Yes, it does. I need to know how much I owe you." Daniel crouched down to get on her level. "Isabella, you don't owe me anything. When we take care of family, it's not about debts." "But you aren't our family," Isabella said, but her voice didn't sound convinced. "Not yet," Daniel admitted, "but I'd like to be." Isabella studied him for a long moment. "What does that mean?" "It means I want you guys to stay with me, not just for a few days. Forever." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "Forever? Really?" That night, after the babies finished their bottles, Daniel and Isabella talked in the kitchen. She was drinking a glass of warm milk, something Daniel had discovered helped her sleep better. "Isabella," Daniel asked, "do you know what adoption is?" She nodded, adjusting Peter on her lap. "I know. It's when a new family takes kids who don't have a real family." "And what do you think about that?" Isabella fell silent for a moment, turning the glass in her small hands. "Do you want to adopt us?" she finally asked. "I do, but only if you want that too." "And if I say I don't want to?" "Then we'll find another way to stay together." "But I'm not going to abandon you, Isabella. That, I promise." Isabella studied him with that intensity Daniel was learning to recognize. It was the look of someone who had learned not to trust easily, but desperately wanted to believe. "If you become our adoptive dad," she said slowly, "will you send us away if we do something wrong?" The question broke Daniel's heart. "Never. Family isn't about doing everything right, Isabella. It's about being together, even when things get tough." "What if you get a girlfriend who doesn't like us?" "Then she won't be the right person for me." "And what if you get tired of taking care of babies? They're a lot of work." "Michael and Peter are your brothers. If I choose you, I choose all of you. There is no halfway." Isabella nodded slowly. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. There's no rush." But Daniel realized Isabella had already been thinking about it for a long time. Maybe since the moment he stopped the car on the street. The next morning, Daniel canceled his meetings for the day. Instead of going to the office, he stayed home helping Isabella take care of the babies. He learned how to change diapers properly, how to get bottles to the right temperature, and how to recognize the different types of crying. "Michael cries like this when he wants attention," Isabella explained, demonstrating different sounds, "and like this when he's in pain. Peter is quieter, but when he cries, it's because he really needs something." Daniel absorbed every piece of information as if he were studying for the most important exam of his life. In a way, He was. You're a good teacher, Daniel said after managing to calm Peter down by himself. I had to learn fast, Isabella replied. When you have to take care of someone, you learn. That afternoon, Mark called with information about the adoption process. Since the children don't have living relatives and are already in your care, the process might be faster, but it will require a psychological evaluation, a visit from a social worker, and proof of income. How long will it take? Between 6 months and a year, if everything goes well. And can the kids stay with me during that time? Technically, your situation is already irregular. Ideally, they should be in a shelter or foster care while the process is underway. Daniel felt panic rising. No, they're staying with me. Daniel, I understand your concern, but there are procedures. Mark, find a way. The kids have been through enough trauma already. I'm not separating them now. When Daniel hung up, Isabella was standing in the kitchen doorway, clearly having heard part of the conversation. Can they take us away? She asked, her voice cracking. Daniel knelt down in front of her. I won't let that happen, I promise you. But what if they say you can't keep us? Then we'll fight together. Isabella nodded, but Daniel saw the fear in her eyes. The fear of being separated from her brothers, of losing yet another family. That night, after everyone was asleep, Daniel lay awake, thinking about everything that had changed in his life over the last few days. His routine, his priorities, his future plans. Everything had been turned upside down. But when he looked at Isabella sleeping on the floor next to the babies, protecting them even in her sleep, Daniel knew he would never regret the decision he had made. For the first time in his life, he had something worth fighting for. It wasn't money, it wasn't professional success, it wasn't recognition. It was love. Love for 3 kids who had come into his life out of nowhere and changed everything. And Daniel was willing to move heaven and earth to keep this family together. The next morning, Daniel woke up determined. He called Mark, asked him to speed up the adoption process, and started making plans to make the situation official as soon as possible, because he knew the fight was just beginning. But he also knew it was worth every tear, every obstacle, every sacrifice. Because for the first time in his life, Daniel had found something truly worth fighting for. 3 days after the initial visit to the doctor, Daniel was in the kitchen making breakfast when he heard a conversation that changed everything. Isabella was on the living room phone, speaking softly, but something in her tone caught his attention. No, I don't want to go, she was saying. I want to stay here. Daniel approached quietly and realized Isabella was talking to someone official. Her voice had that defensive tone he already knew so well. But he takes good care of us, Isabella continues. Michael and Peter are healthy. I'm happy here. Daniel's heart raced. Who was calling Isabella? How had they gotten his number? He's not a stranger, Isabella said, her voice getting louder. He's our dad now. Daniel walked into the room and saw Isabella gripping the phone with both hands, her eyes full of tears. Who is it? Daniel asked softly. The government lady, Isabella whispered, covering the phone. She wants us to go somewhere else until you can keep us for real. Daniel felt his blood run cold. He took the phone from Isabella's hands. This is Daniel Carter. Mr. Carter, this is Carla Mendoza. I need to inform you that after reviewing the case, we've decided it's best for the children to stay in a more suitable temporary environment while the adoption process is underway. Daniel felt his anger explode. No, they're safe, they're fed, they're taken care of. What could possibly be more adequate than that? Mr. Carter, I understand your position, but there are protocols. The children need to be in an environment with experienced caretakers. I am experienced. I've been taking care of them every single day for a month. 1 month isn't enough experience for 3 children with special needs. Special needs? Daniel looked at Isabella, who was watching him with terror in her eyes. What special needs? Abandonment trauma? Loss of parents? History of malnutrition? These children require specialized care. Daniel realized Carla was creating problems where there were none. Mrs. Mendoza, these kids are thriving here. Michael and Peter have gained weight. Isabella is smiling again. Mr. Carter, the decision has already been made. A van will come to pick up the children tomorrow at 10 a.m. No! The word came out like a roar. You're not taking my children. Mr. Carter, if you resist, I can involve the authorities. Daniel looked at Isabella, who was listening to everything and trembling with fear. Michael and Peter were on the living room floor, playing with colorful blocks, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Mrs. Mendoza, please, just give me more time. Let me prove I can take care of them. I've had enough time to evaluate, Tomorrow at 10, Mr. Carter. The call ended, and Daniel stood there holding the silent phone, trying to process what had just happened. Are they going to take us away? Isabella asked, her voice cracking. Daniel knelt down in front of her. I won't let that happen. But she said it's the law. There are other laws, other ways. Daniel spent the rest of the day making desperate calls. Mark, other lawyers, anyone who could help. But the answer was always the same. Carlo Mendoza had that night, after Michael and Peter had fallen asleep. Daniel sat down with Isabella in the kitchen. Isabella, I need to ask you an important question. Her eyes were red from crying. If I asked you to trust me one last time, would you? What are you going to do? Something that could go very right or very wrong. But I can't let them take you without a fight. Isabella studied him for a long moment. You promised you wouldn't abandon us. And I never will. Then I trust you. Daniel spent the entire night planning. At 6 a.m., he woke the children and started packing some bags. Where are we going? Isabella asked, helping pack the baby's clothes. To a safe place, until I can sort this out. Daniel knew he was making a risky decision, possibly an illegal one. But the thought of seeing Isabella separated from her brothers, of seeing Michael and Peter in a shelter, was unbearable. At 8 a.m., they left the house. Daniel drove for 2 hours until they reached a small town in the countryside, where he had a vacation cabin that no one in the family knew about. It was a place he'd bought years ago as an investment, but never used. The cabin was simple, but clean and safe, with a cozy fireplace and views of the nearby lake. Daniel settled the children into the master bedroom and explained the situation to Isabella. We're going to stay here until I can resolve everything legally. What if they find us? They won't. No one knows about this place. But Daniel was wrong. On the third night, he heard a car pulling up to the cabin. He looked out the window and saw 2 police cruisers and an official government car. Isabella, Daniel said calmly, take Michael and Peter and go to your room. Lock the door. What's happening? Just do what I'm asking. Daniel opened the door before they could knock. Carla Mendoza was there, accompanied by 2 officers. Mr. Carter, she said, you have committed kidnapping. You need to hand over the children immediately. Kidnapping? Daniel couldn't believe it. They are my kids. Legally, they aren't. You removed 3 minors from the jurisdiction without authorization. One of the officers stepped forward. Mr. Carter, please, don't make the situation any harder. We know the children are here. Daniel looked at the determined faces in front of him and realized he had lost. But before he could respond, he heard footsteps behind him. Isabella had come out of the room carrying Michael, with Peter in her arms. She walked up to Daniel and stood right beside him. I'm not going, she said, her voice clear and firm. Isabella, you're a minor. You don't have a choice. Yes, I do. I can choose who I want to be my father. That's not how it works. Then how does it work? Isabella asked, and Daniel was surprised by the maturity in her voice. Are you going to separate my brothers? You'll put us in different homes if necessary? Why? What did we do wrong? Carlo was clearly uncomfortable with Isabella's direct questions. You didn't do anything wrong, but there are rules. Rules that separate siblings? Rules that take children out of homes where they are loved? One of the officers, an older man with gray hair, approached Isabella. Sweetheart, I understand that you're scared, but these adults know what's best for you. Isabella looked directly into his eyes. Do you have children? I have 2. And if someone came to your house and said they were going to take your kids away because there's a rule, Mother, so very for me, so 550 may remember's own, would you let them? The officer hesitated. That's different. Why is it different? Because your children were born from a tummy, and mine were born from the heart. Daniel felt his eyes filling with tears. Isabella was fighting for their family with a wisdom that put the adults in the room to shame. Isabella, Carla said, clearly losing her patience. You don't understand the complexities of the situation. I understand that you want to break up our family. I understand that you think you know what's good for me better than I do. Isabella turned to Daniel. You said you were going to fight for us. I am fighting. Then don't stop now. Daniel looked at Carla, at the officers, and made a decision that would change everything. Mrs. Mendoza, he said, I want to make a proposal. There are no proposals. The children are coming with us. Give me 1 week. 1 week to prove that these kids are better off with me than in any shelter. Mr. Carter, A public hearing allows a judge to decide after hearing from the children themselves. The children are minors. They can't testify. Isabella is 8 years old. She is smart enough to know what she wants. The older officer intervened. This is Mendoza. Maybe it's worth considering. Officer Santos. Protocols exist for a reason. Sometimes protocol isn't what's best for the kids. When they came back, Santos had a determined look on his face. Mrs. Mendoza has decided to give you 2 weeks instead of 1, but you stay in the city with daily check-in visits. Daniel looked at Isabella, who gave a slight nod. I accept, Daniel said. And if by the end of the 2 weeks the situation isn't resolved, the children will be removed without further discussion. Understood? After they left, Daniel and Isabella were left alone in the empty cabin. Are we gonna make it? Isabella asked. We will, Daniel replied. But for the first time, he was genuinely scared. 2 weeks to save his family. 2 weeks to prove that love matters more than protocol. The final battle was just beginning. Daniel knew that 2 weeks wasn't enough to change the system. But maybe, just maybe, it was enough to touch some hearts. He got to work immediately, calling every single contact he had. On Monday, Dr. Roberts, the pediatrician, came to the house to do a full checkup on the kids. His medical reports would be crucial to prove they were receiving proper care. Daniel, doctors, Roberts said after examining Michael and Peter. These kids are in excellent health. Michael has gained 2 pounds since you started caring for him. Peter is developing perfectly, and Isabella is radiant. I've been seeing her for a month, and she seems like a completely different child. More confident, happier, more secure. Dr. Roberts sat in the living room, watching Isabella play with her brothers. Daniel, in 30 years of pediatrics, I've rarely seen kids adapt so well to a new family situation. What you have here is special. Can you put that in writing? I'm already drafting the report. But Daniel, I need to warn you about something. What is it? Carla Mendoza called me. She's asking specific questions about potential developmental issues, untreated trauma, anything she can use against you. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. And what did you say? The truth, that these kids are flourishing under your care. On Tuesday, Daniel received an unexpected visit. Margaret Sinclair, a journalist from the Seattle Times, was at the door. Mr. Carter, I'm Margaret Sinclair. I heard about your story, and I'd like to talk. Daniel hesitated. Publicity could be good or bad, depending on the angle. I don't know if that's a good idea. Mr. Carter, sometimes public opinion can influence official decisions, especially when it comes to a clear injustice. Margaret spent 2 hours at the house, watching Daniel interact with the kids, asking questions about their journey. She was particularly impressed with Isabella. That girl is extraordinary, she told Daniel in private. Her maturity, the way she takes care of her brothers, the love she shows for you. Mother, so very for me, so 570 may remember's own. It's impossible to look at this family and not see that you belong together. Can you help us? I can tell your story. The rest depends on people reading it and caring. On Wednesday, the article was published. The headline read, "The Tech Millionaire Who Chose Love. One Man's Fight to Keep His Family Together." The story spread across social media like wildfire. Daniel started getting calls from all over the country. People offering support, lawyers volunteering to help for free, families sharing their own adoption stories. But the most important call came on Thursday. Mr. Carter, this is Regina Santos, Officer Santos's wife. The one who was at your cabin, Mrs. Santos. Mr. Carter, I've been a social worker for 20 years. I retired last year, but I still have contacts. I'd like to help. Regina explained that she knew the system from the inside. She knew how to navigate the red tape, how to present the case in the best possible light. The problem isn't you, Mr. Carter. The problem is that Carla Mendoza has a reputation to protect. She never admits she was wrong. So how do we proceed? We need to go over her head, straight to the judge, and we need more than just medical reports. Regina helped Daniel put together a complete dossier. Photos of the kids before and after, medical reports, statements from neighbors, testimonies from people who had seen the children's transformation. On Friday, 1 week before the deadline, Daniel got the call that changed everything. Mr. Carter, this is Dr. Fernando Oliveira. I was the one who delivered the twins 6 months ago. Daniel didn't immediately grasp the importance of the call. Dr. Oliveira, how can I help you? Actually, I'm the one who can help you. I read your story in the paper and recognized the children. Mr. Carter, you need to know something about Isabella, Michael, and Peter's parents. What is it? Before she died, the children's mother made an informal will. She was worried because she didn't have any relatives and wanted to ensure the children stayed together if anything happened. Daniel felt his heart race. She appointed a guardian, not specifically by name, but she left clear instruction, is that the children should be raised by someone who loved them as she did, who would keep the family together and give them opportunities to grow. This is documented. It's in the hospital records. It was never legally formalized, but it's a document signed by her and 2 witnesses. Daniel almost collapsed with relief. Dr. Oliveira, can you help us? I'm already preparing all the paperwork. Mr. Carter, that mother would be grateful to know that her children found someone like you. On Saturday, a week before the deadline, Daniel decided to do something risky. He called every newspaper, radio station, and TV channel in the city. I'm going to hold a press conference. I want everyone to see these children, see our family, and decide for themselves if we should be separated. Mark, his lawyer, tried to talk him out of it. Daniel, this could be detrimental to the case. Mark, it's time to stop playing by the system's rules. I'm going to appeal directly to people's humanity. The press conference was scheduled for Sunday in Daniel's garden. About 50 journalists showed up, along with dozens of neighbors and curious onlookers. Daniel stood in the center of the garden, with Isabella by his side, holding Michael and Peter in his arms. My name is Daniel Carter, he began, and this is my family. His voice was steady, but emotional. 5 weeks ago, I was a single man, worried only about profits in the tech world. Then, I found 3 children who needed love, and I discovered that I was the one who needed them. Daniel told the whole story, from the meeting on the street to the threat of separation. His voice cracked a few times, especially when he spoke about the possibility of Isabella being separated from her brothers. I'm not here to criticize the system, Daniel said. I'm standing here to defend a simple truth. Family isn't about genetics. It's about love, care, and commitment. He paused, looking right into the cameras. If you take these children away from me, you'll be tearing away the only family they know right now. If you separate me from them, you're taking... Daniel knelt down to get on Isabella's level. Isabella wants to talk to you. The little girl stepped up to the microphone, still holding on to Michael. My name is Isabella, she said, her voice clear and strong. These are my brothers, Michael and Peter. And this is my dad, Daniel. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Now we have all of that. But more importantly, we have love. Isabella looked straight into the cameras. If you please, let our family stay together. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Several journalists were clearly moved, and Daniel realized he'd truly touched people's hearts. By Monday, the video of the press conference had gone viral on every social media platform. The hashtag United Family was trending as one of the most talked about topics in the country. Thousands of people were sharing the story, begging the authorities to reconsider the decision. On Tuesday, Daniel got a phone call from the office of the judge presiding over the case. Mr. Carter, Judge Montenegro would like to speak with you and the children in his office tomorrow at 2 p.m. Is it official? It's an informal hearing, but it could be decisive for the case. On Wednesday, Daniel put on his best suit and dressed the children with great care. Isabella was wearing a simple but beautiful dress that Daniel had bought for her, and the babies were in matching outfits. Judge Montenegro was a man of 60, with white hair but kind eyes. His office felt welcoming, with family photos lining the walls. Mr. Carter, Isabella, he said, I called you here because I want to understand this situation better. The judge asked direct yet gentle questions. He asked Daniel about his motivations, his plans for the future, and his financial stability. He asked Isabella how she felt, if she was happy, if she felt safe. Isabella, the judge finally said, if you could choose where to live, what would you choose? I want to stay with Daniel, and I want Michael and Peter to stay with me. Why? Because he takes care of us, because he loves us, and because he promised he'd never split us off. The judge nodded and turned to Daniel. Mr. Carter, do you understand that adopting 3 children is a massive responsibility? I do. I'm ready for it. And if things get tough? Adolescence, trouble at school, sickness? Daniel looked at Isabella, who was watching him with total confidence. Judge Montenegro, these kids have already been through the hardest thing anyone can go through, losing their parents. If we can get through that together, we can get through anything. The judge sat in silence for a long moment, studying the papers on his desk. Mr. Carter, I've read all the reports. medical, psychological, social. I've spoken with neighbors, teachers, people who know you. Daniel held his breath, and I've come to the conclusion that it would be a crime to separate this family. Daniel felt his knees go weak with relief. I'm granting provisional custody immediately, and I'll expedite the adoption process. Carla Mendoza was removed from the case due to improper interference. Isabella threw herself into Daniel's arms, crying tears of joy. Michael and Peter, in their father's arms, seemed to sense the emotion and started to laugh. "Thank you," Daniel whispered. "Thank you for saving our family." 3 months later, the adoption was made official. Daniel was at the courthouse with Isabella, Michael, and Peter, surrounded by friends who had become a chosen family. Margaret Sinclair was there, documenting the historic moment. Dr. Roberts was there with his wife. Regina Santos was there with her husband. Even some neighbors had come to celebrate. When the judge banged the gavel and declared the adoption finalized, Daniel knelt down and hugged the 3 children. "Now it is official," he said. "You are officially my kids, and I am officially your dad." "Forever?" Isabella asked. "Forever." 6 months later, Daniel was in the garden at home, watching Isabella teach Michael to take his first steps. Peter had already been walking for 2 weeks and was running through the grass, laughing. His life had changed completely. He had no more time for unnecessary meetings or hollow business dinners. His nights were filled with bedtime stories, his mornings with family breakfasts, his weekends with parks and playtime, and he had never been happier. "Daddy!" Isabella shouted from the garden. Michael took 3 steps all by himself. Daniel smiled, watching his youngest son wobble toward his sister's arms. His kids, his family. It had started with a simple question from a desperate girl. "Would you keep one?" And Daniel had discovered that the answer was yes. Yes to 1. Yes to 2. Yes to 3. Yes to the love that transforms lives. Yes to the family we choose. And that chooses us back. Yes to everything that really matters in life. In the years that followed, Daniel founded a nonprofit to help orphan siblings stay together, inspired by their story, turning his tech fortune into a force for good across American communities.